Okay, good afternoon. Let's get going. We're just starting the 5th chapter of Maaser Sheni, and it looks as though we're going to change topic radically, because we're going to touch on Kerem Revi'i, the 4th year vineyard, which is a subject which is really related to orlah. And it's puzzling. I mean, you might think perhaps this chapter has been tacked on randomly to the end of the Masechet of Maaser Sheni, but I hope we'll see in a minute, in fact, that this chapter fits very neatly into Maaser Sheni. And what I'd like to do today is, first of all, just to look at the Pesukim, from which the halachot are derived, and then maybe we'll just look at 2 of the Mishnayot at the beginning of the chapter, just to get a sense as to how the halacha is developing. And the Pesukim that we're going to look at, in order to introduce the topic of Kerem Revi'i, are from the Sedra of Kodoshim. So we're in Kodoshim, we're in the area of, and you remember that the Sedra of Kodoshim deals with all kinds of different Kedusha between mitzvot bein Adam lachavero and mitzvot bein Adam l'Shem, l'Shemaim. And one of the mitzvot is that when you enter the land, you keep its fruit as orlah for 3 years. Orlah is to do with being uncircumcised. It's difficult to translate. I haven't tried to translate it here. But the pasuk says, V'chitavo el haaretz untatemet kol eitz machal, when you plant any fruit tree, and the ve'arlatem orlato, va'araltem orlato et prio shalosh shanim yeh lachem arelim lo yachel. The fruit is orlah for 3 years. It can't be eaten. And we know this halacha. But then the Pesukim continue. Uvashana haravit, in the 4th year. This is really important. Ye kol pirio kodesh. All the fruit is holy. This might remind us, by the way, about the law of Maaser Sheni. The Maaser Sheni is also Kodesh, and this is Hilulim Lashem, rejoicing for the Lord. And then in the 5th year, you can eat whatever you like. And Rashi says there, Rashi comments, and he's quoting the Gemara in Brachot. He says, when the text says, Ye kol pirio Kodesh, ke Maaser Sheni, this is like Maaser Sheni shekatuv bo bechol masar haaretz, etc. is Kodesh Lashem. So there's a word play between Kodesh and Kodesh in Vayikra 20 at the end of Bechukotai, at the end of Bechukotai, where we learn the halachot of Maaser Sheni, and here in Kedoshim, where we're learning the halachot of the vineyard in the 4th year. And Rashi then goes on to say that just as the second tithe must not be eaten outside the walls of Jerusalem, except if it's been redeemed, so too with this. And we take it, v'davar zeh hilulim l'Hashem, we take it for rejoicing before God. That means that you actually pick it up and you take it there, shenos or sham, you take it there to praise and to rejoice to the heavens. So in other words, the produce of the 4th year is holy, and it is taken up to Jerusalem just like Maaser Sheni. So we can see now why the halachot of the 4th year vineyard, Kerem Revi'i, are tacked on, if you like, as an extra chapter to the chapters of the tractate in Maaser Sheni. We treat them in the same kind of way. They can be redeemed, and they must be brought to Jerusalem. And now we'll see the principles in the Mishnah. Kerem Revi'i, a vineyard in its 4th year, I've called it. Mutzainin oto. We mark it out. Kozazot adama. We can mark it out with clods of earth. And then if it's orlah, first 3 years, we mark it out with potsherds, b'charsit. And if it's got graves in it, besid, we mark it out with lime. Umacheh v'shofech. We mix it up in water and we dissolve it. Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel says, when does this apply? Now he's talking, by the way, about Kerem Revi'i. He says it applies in the 7th year. For some reason, we don't need to do it in the other years? And we'll find out a little bit more about that. Let's come back to that question. And then the Mishnah continues, people who are conscientious, they had snuim, these are the people who are tsanua. Tsanua in the Mishnah doesn't mean people who wore long skirts. Tsanua in the Mishnah means people who are careful and modest about their behavior. Completely different from the meaning given by kind of certain Haredi rabbis. It means people who are careful about their behavior. They had snuim. People who are careful would put aside money and they would say, this money is set aside, and any fruit that someone gathers, that means someone steals from this vineyard, may be exchanged for this money. So in other words, they arrange that even if someone does steal fruit from the vineyard, they're not guilty of transgressing the laws of the fourth year, because that fruit, as they steal it, is already being, if you like, it's been pre-redeemed for money. As fruit is stolen, the money is sort of gradually converted into money that's been exchanged for fourth year vineyard produce. Now, why does this only apply in the seventh year? Well, remember, in the seventh year, the vineyard is hefker, it's ownerless. So anybody can just come in and take the fruit. So in the fourth year, if anybody can walk in and take the fruit, you have to mark it out and let them know that it's a fourth year vineyard. Otherwise, they might unwittingly transgress. In the other years, well, it's not really permitted just to walk into someone's vineyard and take all the fruit. And there's an acid comment in the Gemara in Baba Kama, which I couldn't resist bringing you, because it sort of, this really explains Rabban, and this really explains Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel when he says, oh yeah, we only have to mark it out in the seventh year. Aval b'shar shnei, in the other years, b'shar shnei shavur, in the other years of the seven, halitehu l'rasha v'yamot. In the other years of the cycle, we just stuff it down the mouth of the wicked man. This is the wicked man who's walked into the vineyard and stolen your grapes, and we just let him die. That's what Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel thinks about people who wander and steal people's grapes outside the seventh year when they have grain. So to summarize, we're going to mark out the vineyards in the fourth year and in previous years when they're in their fourth year. Okay, let's just learn a few. We've got just a couple of minutes left. Let's just learn some of the basic halachot of the Kerem Reva'i, the fourth year vineyard. Kerem Reva'i haya ole Yerushalayim malach yom echad l'chol tzad. So if the vineyard was within a day's walk of Jerusalem, you would bring up the fruit to Jerusalem rather than redeeming it. And what does that mean? What's the limit? Well, Eilat in the south, let's come back to that. Akrabat in the north, Lud in the west, and Jordan in the east. Well, we know Jordan. We know that's more or less a day's walk from Jerusalem. And we know Lud, by the way, in the west. It's sort of near the airport. It's not going to be that far away from the modern town of Lud. That's also a day's walk. Akrabat, I don't know where it is. If you look it up in Jastro just says, well, it just quotes our Mishnah and says, well, it's a day's walk north of Jerusalem. So I don't know where Akrabat is. Eilat, the modern Eilat, is clearly not a day's walk from Jerusalem. And the Mishnah here seems to be talking about some other place that is a day's walk. It's not talking about the Eilat that we know right by the Red Sea. So we got a day's walk. If it's within a day's walk, we're going to bring it into Jerusalem, just like Maaser Sheni, right? We can see now why this subject fits neatly on the end of the Masechet and Maaser Sheni. We're going to bring it in Jerusalem. We're going to eat it there. Otherwise, we're going to redeem it. Well, what if we got too much? What if people have too much food, or maybe they can't bring it all up? Mishe Rabu Haperot. When it turned out there were much too much produce. They made a takana that even if your vineyard was right on the edge of the wall, you could redeem it. But they did put a condition. that whenever it was so desired, that they made a condition that, if you like, this takana could be reversed. When they made the takana, when they made the ruling, they made it possible to be reversed. And Rabbi Yossi says, this comes back to some of our discussion yesterday about before and after the destruction of the temple. Rabbi Yossi says, this condition was made after the temple was destroyed. The condition was, in other words, after the temple was destroyed, the markets in Jerusalem were full of invaders. Jerusalem wasn't operating in the same way. It just wasn't practical to bring all these fruits to Jerusalem in the same way. But they did make a condition that when the temple was rebuilt again, the condition could be reversed. So that's the brief picture for Kerem Reva'i. And then we will find out Kerem Reva'i, and then we'll find out more about it tomorrow. And indeed, we're going to carry on this subject over the whole of the next week. This is a long chapter, the fifth chapter of Maaser Sheni.